Potassium and Plant Stress by the Potash Development Association. This presentation will cover the following topics: an introduction to plant stress and the impacts this can have on plants, the role of potassium within plants, the role of magnesium in plants, how potassium can alleviate stress in crops, how magnesium can alleviate stress in crops, and the impact of potassium on pest pressure. Introduction to the Potash Development Association. The PDA is an independent service providing information to support the correct use of potash in UK agriculture. This is achieved through the website, presentations to groups of students, farmers and advisors, phone and email support, leaflets on a range of topics that are available to download from the website, quarterly newsletters and periodic technical emails. This is all provided free of charge. Introduction. Several environmental conditions can cause stress to plants. Drought, high or low temperature, high or low light intensity, salinity, acidity, poor supply of nutrients, and attack by fungi, bacteria, viruses, and insects. Stressed plants grow more slowly, may show unusual growth patterns, and give reduced yields. Stress affects crops directly, for example by reducing the rate of photosynthesis and so growth. However, there are other, less obvious effects within the plant. Some of the damage caused by stress is due to formation of reactive forms of oxygen during plant metabolism, where the normal process of photosynthesis is disrupted by lack of carbon dioxide, inhibition of sugar formation, or reduced rate of movement of sugars out of the leaf. The metabolic pathways are diverted to produce reactive forms of oxygen. These are highly toxic, damage cell membranes, and degrade chlorophyll, with resulting effects on plant growth and development. Roles of potassium in the plant. Potassium is the main cation in the sap and fruits. It's involved in many metabolic processes and osmoregulation. In practice, this means it's important for turgor pressure and crop standing power, drought, cold and disease resistance, transport of anions and sugars around the plant, and efficient use of nitrogen. Going into these in more detail, the water regulation and standing power. Potassium is the plant-preferred ion for maintaining the water content and hence the turgor or rigidity of each cell. A large concentration of potassium in the cell sap causes water to move into the cell by osmosis through the porous cell wall. As water flows into the cells, it causes them to swell, putting pressure on cell walls to help maintain a rigid and upright structure for plants. Turgid cells maintain a leaf vigor so that photosynthesis proceeds efficiently. Plants that are short on potassium are less efficient at regulating water as the osmotic potential is reduced and therefore less water flows into cells. This can result in flaccid cells which lose shape and are less capable of maintaining turgor pressure, which is more likely to result in lodging. Drought tolerance. Related to the role of water regulation is the impact of potassium on drought tolerance. Plants depend on potassium to regulate the opening and closing of leaf stomates. These are the tiny apertures on the underside of the leaves. The stomata are important for allowing the movement of carbon dioxide into the plant, whilst releasing oxygen. The plant regulates the opening and closing of the stomata through movement of potassium into or out of the guard cells. When potassium moves into these cells, they accumulate water as a result of their higher salt concentrations through osmosis, and therefore swell, opening the pores. If potassium levels within the plant are low, the stomata become slow to respond and do not close as quickly, resulting in the loss of water vapor and a reduced photosynthetic rate. Plants subjected to stresses such as moisture stress considerably reduce photosynthetic rates, reducing the efficiency of carbohydrate production, resulting in lower yield. Photosynthetic rates are maintained in potassium-sufficient plants through efficient stomatal activity. Cold tolerance. The formation of ice crystals within plants at low temperatures can destroy plant cells. Plants try to protect themselves against this by storing osmotically effective substances such as sugar and potassium within their cells. Both substances serve as antifreeze agents as they lower the cell's sap's freezing point, thereby maintaining cell functionality. Deeply frozen soil also prevents plants from absorbing sufficient water. Plants are most at risk when evaporation rates are high from sunny and windy weather. A lack of moisture in this circumstance can be detrimental to plants. Potassium helps to protect against this by regulating the plant's water balance, preventing uncontrolled loss of water through the leaves. Disease resistance. Potassium has an essential role in plant disease and pest resistance, and is probably the most effective of all the nutrients. It is a regulator of enzyme activity and therefore involved in nearly all cellular functions that influence disease severity. Potassium is required for the synthesis of cellulose, a component of cell walls. Cellulose acts as a mechanical barrier to invasion and infection. Potassium deficiency reduces cellulose production, leading to thinner cell walls with less resistance to infection. Just as humans produce antibodies after infection, plants have a similar defense mechanism when infected by a pathogen. The infection causes increased production of certain chemicals that form part of the plant's defense mechanism. The potassium status of a plant is important for both the production and the transport of these compounds to the site of infection. Shortages reduce the amount of natural antifungal compounds, increasing the plant's susceptibility to disease once it has penetrated the cells. Roles of magnesium in the plant. Magnesium is well known as an essential component of chlorophyll, the molecule that controls photosynthesis. However, magnesium is also involved in protein synthesis and in the movement of sugars from leaves to other parts of the plant. Inadequate supply of magnesium results in reduced root growth, lower chlorophyll concentration, and accumulation of starch and sugars in the leaf and reduced contents in the roots. This table demonstrates the effects of magnesium supply on shoot and root growth and chlorophyll concentrations in beans. This clearly shows the increase in dry matter produced with a higher magnesium supply, along with a nearly threefold increase in chlorophyll production. How potassium can alleviate stress. Potassium helps the plant resist stress in several ways. It maintains cell turgor and structural strength, keeps stomata open and so lowers resistance to carbon dioxide entry to the leaf, improves conversion of light energy into chemical energy of carbohydrates through photosynthesis, maintains the transport of sugars from leaves to the rest of the plant, forms and maintains strong root growth, and minimizes production of damaging reactive forms of oxygen. A good supply of potassium helps a crop resist the effects of drought by delaying the onset of wilting, and so maintaining the movement of carbon dioxide into the plant for photosynthesis. Potassium is also involved in the transport of sugars from leaves to the rest of the plant, so promoting root growth and more effective uptake of water and nutrients. Through its roles in maintaining cell strength and production of disease inhibitors, potassium reduces the incidence and severity of fungal infections. A beneficial effect of potassium was found in 526 of the 740 studies of crop fungal infection, and in 51 of the 68 studies of bacterial infection. There is evidence that plants exposed to stress benefit from more than the usual amounts of potassium. For example, large applications have reduced the extent of cold damage in oilseed rape. The table here shows the effect of potassium supply on cold damage in oilseed rape, with the proportion of plants exhibiting signs of cold damage decreasing dramatically as the level of potassium applied to the crop increases. How magnesium can alleviate stress. Magnesium is involved in many biochemical processes within the plant, activating more enzymes than any other nutrient. An adequate supply helps the plant in several ways: through the formation and maintenance of chlorophyll concentration, formation and maintenance of strong root growth, and minimized production of damaging reactive forms of oxygen. One of the first symptoms of magnesium deficiency is a change in partitioning of dry matter between shoots and roots. Deficiency reduces the movement of sugars out of the leaves, so reducing root growth. Plants suffering from magnesium deficiency therefore will be less able to exploit the soil for water and nutrients, making them susceptible to drought and low nutrient supply. Accumulation of sugars in the leaf also inhibits the normal process of photosynthesis, leading to the formation of damaging forms of reactive oxygen. Potassium and pest pressure. BYDV is the most economically important virus in UK cereals, with severe infections causing losses of up to 60% in winter wheat and 50% in winter barley. Turnip yellows virus is the most important viral disease of oilseed rape in the UK, decreasing yields by up to 26%, whilst also knocking oil production. Virus yellows, including beet mild yellowing virus, beet chlorosis virus, and beet yellows, are a complex of particularly damaging viruses that can cause yield losses of up to 50% when infection occurs early in the season. All of these viral diseases are transmitted by aphids. As well as potentially transmitting viruses, aphids can also cause wilting, distortion, or stunting of plant shoots. The role of potassium in mitigating crop damage due to insects is complex. Potassium plays an important physiological role, including build-up of resistance to insect pests. Adequate amounts of K have been reported to decrease the incidence of insect damage considerably. Plants well supplied with nitrogen and insufficient potassium have soft tissues with little resistance to sucking and chewing pests. Adequate levels of potassium in plants leads to a reduction in carbohydrate accumulation, lowering the likelihood of attracting insect pests, while the tissue yellowing symptoms of potassium deficiency acts as a signal to attract aphids. A sufficient potassium supply tends to harden plant structures, strengthening cell walls, leading to thicker and harder stems and leaves. This hardening of plant structures improves mechanical resistance to feeding of insects, especially sucking insects, such as aphids. This table shows the correlation between potassium treatments and aphid pressure in oilseed rape. Potassium has a negative impact on the growth and development of sucking pests. Higher plant potassium levels resulted in a decline in occurrence, population levels, rate of population increase, and net reproductive rate of aphids, resulting in an increase in yield. Effective crop nutrition. Potassium and magnesium are essential for so many processes within the plant that any deficiency of either nutrient will have a very large number of direct and indirect adverse effects. In particular, both are involved in photosynthesis and root growth. Any inhibition of the first will lead to reduced growth and production of reactive forms of oxygen, and inhibition of root growth will reduce the plant's ability to take up water and nutrients. Stressed plants are particularly vulnerable to effects of potassium or magnesium deficiency. Plants deficient in potassium or magnesium suffer poor root growth and take up and utilize nitrogen less efficiently. They are more susceptible to infection by fungi and bacteria. It is vital that deficiencies are not allowed to occur, and this means regular soil analysis, routine calculation of nutrient balances for every field, and crop inspection to check for deficiency symptoms. Soil indices should not be allowed to fall below the target for potassium, which is 2- for arable crops and grassland, and 2+ for field vegetables. At lower indices, full yield may not be achieved even if recommended rates of potash are applied. Owing to their roles in transport of sugars from leaves to roots, supplies of potassium and magnesium are especially important for crops like potatoes and sugar beet, whose values depend on accumulation of carbohydrates in the roots. Where these crops are stressed, for example by drought, potassium and magnesium supplies need to be ample, possibly even larger than those normally recommended. Thank you for listening to this webinar on the potassium and the plant stress. For more information, please visit the website at www.pda.org.uk, email at info@pda.org.uk, or follow us on Twitter at @pda_potash. Thank you.